Hey guys, Christy here and welcome back to my channel. So today is another edition of Tuesday Talks with Andrew. So on Tuesdays I feature a more informative video with my coach Andrew and Pardue. If you don't know who he is, Andrew is my coach. He is working with me for my bikini prep and my wedding prep. I will link his information in the description box below. In today's topic, we're going to be covering the myths around compound movements or compound exercises in females. So basically we're going to be talking about if you're a female, should you be doing these types of exercises? So these exercises such as squats, deadlifts, and bench. So if you're interested in learning more, here's my coach.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Tuesday Talks with Andrew and what is now our third episode in the series since we started a few weeks earlier as Christina and I began working together for her contest and wedding prep. We wanted to take a few minutes this week and have me talk about compound lifts and female athletes. I see way more times than not of female bikini and figure athletes doing everything they possibly can to avoid big compound lifts like squats, deadlifts, bench press, shoulder press. And there's kind of this misconception, even now after especially the last 5, 10, 15 years of research that has come out to help physique athletes progress in their development. There's still kind of a stigma that lifting these big compound lifts are going to make women bulky, make them look manly, mess up their physique and not give them the physique they need for figure in bikini. It's really a shame because with a lot of the female athletes that I work with, they'll come to me not doing these compound lifts. We'll eventually get them incorporated into those lifts and kind of talk them into giving it a try and helping to give some of the research that shows the benefit of doing them, and the benefits they see are just incredible. I mean, it leads to two different kind of physiques between someone that's doing everything they can to avoid these compound lifts and somebody that actually embraces the benefits and the work that takes to do them, and then also the progress that they help to bring in return. So we just wanted to talk about a few of the things that lead me to believe it is as big of a misconception it is, and why I think it's so important for figure and bikini athletes to do. Even if you aren't competing, for females in general, there's just so many benefits. Of course the functional side, but then also just a physique side that I think a lot of people are missing out on. And I took down a few notes, and one of the biggest ones would be, and something that I think is not talked about enough in the industry, but simply your testosterone levels are much lower than what a male counterpart would be, unless you're doing drugs or something like that. Naturally a female's testosterone levels are going to be a fraction of what men's are. So that alone is really going to limit how much muscle tissue you can put on. So for a lot of the women out there that are afraid that they're going to look manly, look bulky, they're going to gain too much muscle, other than a few genetic outliers or someone that's on drugs, of 9 times out of 10, if not even more than that, you're not going to look big and manly just because you don't have the hormone profile that a man would that would allow you to do that. So for women, these compound lifts, they're going to help you get stronger, which functionally is obviously a great thing. And then obviously with that strength is going to come some size, but it's not going to be to the level of men, but it is going to be to the level that it's going to be noticeable on your physique. You're going to have better shape, you're going to have better quads, you're going to have more capped shoulders and a more detailed back, to the point that it's going to still look good in a dress. It's going to help you fill out that dress and have a better shape, the kind of shape that women are looking for, versus you're not going to be ripping your shirts apart because you're so huge. So that's a big thing to keep in mind, is hormones play such a large factor in growth and development. That's why people take drugs. That's why males have an easier time getting big when they're doing these big kind of compound movements. So that alone, I think, tends to put a lot of people at ease, a lot of females at ease when we start working together, is just keeping that in mind when you're doing these lifts. I would also say, just from a structural standpoint, more times than not, women are just smaller than men. As far as the bone outline of your body, just the general structure of your body, you're going to be less capable of holding as much muscle mass as a male would. There's differences in hip widths and all these other kind of things with as far as bone structure goes, and that's going to play a factor into it as well. Also, just the time it takes to gain muscle is another consideration for females afraid to do these compound lifts for fear of being too big or getting too muscular. Just in general, it takes a long time for a natural athlete to gain muscle in any fashion. Even for males that are trying to get too big, it's going to take them years and years to do. Most successful natural bodybuilders are 40, 50 years old. Not because they started late most of the time, it's because they've spent several decades developing their physique to get to that point. You know, those three things in general, anytime that someone asks me, well, what if I'm going to get too big doing these lifts? Just these things in general, these three, and I'm sure there's other factors that I'm just not even thinking about this morning, that's really going to play a lot into the fact that you're not going to get too big, but they are going to help you in a lot of different ways. Just some examples I wanted to touch on was deadlifts. I don't see a lot of women deadlift. I'll see women do stiff leg deadlifts or Romanian deadlifts, which obviously focuses a little bit more on glutes and hams than maybe a full-on deadlift would be as far as what it's actually targeting. But few people are willing to do a full conventional deadlift. Again, for the reasons I mentioned before, but one thing I would want to mention, conventional deadlifts are difficult, they're very challenging, which is one of the fun things about the lift, but more so than that, the deadlifts are going to help so many muscles that a figure or bikini athlete should want to develop if they're going to get better and really bring it on stage. Everything from calves to a certain degree, but more so hamstrings, glutes, your core, so your ab muscles, back, arms. It's really going to help with that posterior chain, more importantly, like I said, back, glutes, hamstrings. It's really going to help develop those. Again, you're not going to get too big for the reasons I mentioned earlier, but it is going to develop those areas very, very effectively. When you're training with a heavier load like you would for a deadlift versus something very light like really high rep stiff leg deadlifts, it's really going to activate those same muscles to a much greater degree, which is one reason that you want to do compound movements. So another example, squats. A lot of women will do squats, but they won't do heavy squats. They'll do some other kind of variation of squats. They'll do really lightweight, balance at the bottom squats. A lot of things that it's better than not squatting at all, but it's not nearly as good as performing a standard heavy squat. When I say heavy squats, obviously you still want to change the rep range around, change your set schemes up periodically to continue progressing and to stimulate the muscle in different ways. But you want to do a standard heavy squat because, again, it's going to stimulate those same muscle fibers to a much greater degree than if you're doing some of these variations that I see that are not quite spinning your wheels, but it's just not going to help you progress nearly to the level of focusing on, again, the heavy squats, the heavy deadlifts. And I would even say for bench press, I'm going to say those three, that's kind of what I'm harping on, just because those three exercises alone, the squat, bench, and deadlift, are so beneficial to physique athletes in any division and avoided at all costs. And I would say bench press is probably even more avoided than squats and deadlifts. I had a lot of female athletes come to me thinking that it would make them flat-chested. Without sounding crass, it would make their breasts look manly or look odd. In reality, the bench press is one of the best movements a female can do to help have a fuller chest, a more feminine chest. Again, unless you're one of these genetic outliers or on drugs, you're not going to have these huge pecs that you see in a lot of these online memes and everything else when people joke about very strong, big women. The bench press and the different forms of bench press, incline flat, dumbbell, barbell, it's going to do a lot more than it gets credit for women in helping them have a fuller chest, helping them have more rounded shoulders. So that's another movement that it's really underestimated in just how important it is for female athletes, like I said, figure bikini, or just someone wanting to look better from day to day. Those are some of the reasons. It's definitely not a complete list. I know that a lot of female athletes out there are really selling themselves short by not doing these compound lifts, not keeping in mind that they're not going to get too big, they're not going to get too muscular. It's just a matter of structural differences, hormonal differences, and just the time it takes to get bigger. What it can do is help you build that shape, help you build a foundation in general that's just going to be a healthier foundation. And then with that, I would say, as my last point, I'll see a lot of female athletes do almost solely glute isolation exercises. They'll do kickbacks, they'll do donkey presses, they'll do body weight bridges, and all these other kind of things that pretty much serve in place of their squats and deadlifts, but it shouldn't. You might want to get a big booty out there, and as a male bodybuilder that knows that shows her one from the back as a male, glute and hamstring development's right up there with mine too as far as the off season, coincidentally. I know you want to get a big booty, but doing just those isolation glute exercises are not only going to leave a lot of your other lower body muscles underdeveloped and leave you with poor proportions. It's also just going to be a structural and health thing. If you're just doing glute work, but you're not doing a lot of quad incorporated work or hamstring incorporated work, a lot of hinge movements, a few different motor patterns, some lunges. If you're not doing a balance of motor patterns and a balance of lower body exercises as far as what muscles they stimulate, not only are you going to limit how much your glutes are going to be able to grow because everything else is going to be so underdeveloped, a certain proportion to that your body's going to have to keep, but you're also going to risk the risk of injury when you actually do try to do a serious movement. If your glutes are very, very overdeveloped and everything else is underdeveloped in your lower body, there's definitely going to be a much higher risk of injury, which for a lot of people, they don't care, they just want the big butt, and if they risk the injury, so what? But it's a lot easier to say that when you're healthy versus when you actually do get injured. So it's another thing that I like to point out for my female athletes. But this is just a kind of a brief overview of some of my thoughts, my rationale for how I have my bikini and figure athletes train. I have pretty much every female athlete I work with squat, bench, and deadlift in some form or fashion at least twice a week, and that's pretty much universal with the people I work with. What's going to change is how much volume they're training. Much of their workout is compound lifts. Some of it will always be compound lifts, but versus a woman that's trying to get a lot bigger, a lot stronger, she might be doing total volume and total compound lift amounts quite a bit higher than a figure bikini athlete, but they'll still be performing at least some similar exercises. So that's some of the changes as well. Just wanted to give you guys some of the rationale of how I do my training for my female athletes and why I think it's so important not to underestimate these exercises, just so you can kind of get an idea for your own training, and once again with all these series, just to give you something to think about when you're programming your own training, whether you take exactly what my advice is or you take a little bit here and there. It's here to help you guys, so definitely hope you find it helpful. If you have any other topics you want us to talk about, feel free to email us or comment below, and we're more than happy to talk about it. But we definitely appreciate you guys and gals continuing to check out this series. We're excited about the other stuff that we have coming in the next few months. And until then, we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
Alright guys, so I hope that you enjoyed this video. Like Andrew said, if you guys ever have any topics that you would like us to cover, please let us know. We have a lot of fun doing these. And also just to give my perspective on compound movements and exercises, I did what he talked about kind of in the beginning of the video, where I would squat, but I just never really tried to push past my limits or ever really go extremely heavy. I kind of maxed out around 95 pounds and wouldn't do anything over that. And I was really scared to lift in the rep range anywhere of 1 to 6. 10 was like my magic number. And it wasn't until I really started trying to push myself, really striving to push extra weight and to put more plates on each side, where I started to see a lot of growth development. And not only that, but it took a lot of consistency. So I don't want to say, oh, lift heavy, a couple times and you'll get the physique that you want. But it really took a lot of trial and error and finding out what worked for myself. But I would say that heavy compound movements, including squats, deadlifts, and bench, really help shape and create the physique that I have now. I can also attest that you don't pick up a weight and then all of a sudden become super manly or super muscular. I've been lifting for years now and I still do not have the muscle that I wish I had. And I know that, there's that saying, forever small once you start lifting, but it's kind of true. It takes a long time to build and develop muscle, but it takes a lot of time and effort, but you'll get there. So don't give up, incorporate compound movements into your training split, and I guarantee that you will see some progress. So thanks again for watching, guys. If you haven't already, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below, and especially if there's another topic that you'd like us to cover. And I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.